You're listening to Kate Palmer from SparkleTart.com. Today I'm going to show you two backgrounds made using Copic Various Inks that you can create at home in under 5 minutes. So anyone who's used the liquid alcohol inks before will know a whole bunch of background techniques. And this is just one. You can use any alcohol ink for this, but I love using the Copic reinkers just because they're versatile. I already have them to re-ink my Copics, so I didn't need to go and buy anything extra. And of course they come in all those beautiful colours. Now today's background will be quite bright. I'm going to be using the Copic Colorless Blender. Now you can get this in a nice big bottle, which I have bought, which lasts quite a lot longer than the individual various inks. And I'm going to be using 3 different colours of Copic reinker. So I'm going to be using VO6, which is lavender, RV09, which is fuchsia, and YG05, which is called salad. I've got a piece of glossy cardstock, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drip a little of each of these colours onto my craft mat here. Now it needs to be a craft mat, or you can use baking paper, waxed baking paper if you like. So I'm going to make sure that I drip my colours so that they don't touch. Now this VO6 is probably my palest colour, so I've got a bit more of that on there. Now on goes my green. Now, if this doesn't turn out brightly enough, you can always add more colour later. It's difficult to take away. So this RV09 is one of the stronger colours, so I'm not going to add quite as much of that. Now with this, I'm not even adding full drips. I'm just sort of touching the tip here. Alright, so the next step is to put some of your Copic Colorless Blending ink into a mini mister and spritz. Now I always make sure I do this in a well ventilated area, mostly because I'm allergic to alcohol and this is not the kind of stuff I want to be breathing in, but that's probably just good practice for everybody. So make sure you have a fan or a window open. Grab the glossy cardstock, glossy side facing down, and just pop that into the inks here. And I like to slide to pick up some of the colour. Now you can see that's almost fluorescent, that kind of colour. Now it's also not very well covered, so what you do is you keep popping this back into the inks that are left over until all of the colours, all of the corners are covered, and until your cardstock is coated. Now you might need to spritz again with the blending solution. And add a bit more to some areas. Okay, so this is quite bright. I was correct, that pink really does take over. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit more of the lavender. And a tiny bit more of the green. Now I've already got the base colour down, so I don't really need to add as much ink as I did the first time. And this time I'm just going to add drips of the blending solution next to those colours to help with the movement. Okay, so the same thing again. Pop it in and smoosh and swipe. That's more like what I was going for, these kind of droopy kind of looks. Okay, don't forget the edges or the corners. They often get forgotten and you end up with sort of much paler bits at the corner. Fantastic. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. So at that point, I'm going to lay this aside for a few seconds. If you've used alcohol inks before, you know this doesn't take very long to dry. In fact, it's dry now, but I'm just going to clean off my craft mat. Now there are 2 options when doing this. You can add a bit more blending solution. And if you've got any scraps, you can just swipe these through. That's a really easy way to make a paler version, but still colour coordinated. And you can use it to stamp some text, or as a bookmark, or as the base for a tag, or as just a side for a card by itself. I always hate wasting things, so I like to find ways I can use whatever I might have left over. And you can see that's almost cleaned up the majority of what was left on here. I'm just going to wipe that through a few more times. Smush it around a bit, make sure it's picked up as much colour as I can. There we go. Alright, so that's pretty much clean. It's cleaned off my craft mat. It's made a really lovely additional background. You can see it's quite different and far more pale than the original. But it just means that I haven't wasted any of my product. Now I'm just going to finish cleaning this off with just an average baby wipe. Because it's a non-stick craft mat, it doesn't actually have to have alcohol ink in the product to clean it. You just have to apply a little bit of pressure with your fingers. So nothing fancy or expensive required. Alright, so I have my two backgrounds here. I have my first generation, which is the lovely bright colours, and then I have the basically the mopping up version. So this is just the one where I've sort of got the remnants off onto another piece of glossy cardstock. Now it has to be glossy cardstock. If you try this on plain card, it just sucks up like a sponge and you'll end up with spots. You might want that. That's not what I was after this time. Now this last step, I'm using the Copic Various Ink, and again it's the Colorless Blender Various Ink. And even though the name is a bit misleading, it doesn't actually blend. It's great for sort of special effects and techniques, which you all know I love. So for this step, you need to spritz the Copic ink onto your fingers, and then I'm going to flick it onto my backgrounds here, and that will give bleached effects. Now, the quicker you flick like this, the smaller the droplets, the more of this Copic blender, and the slower you flick, the larger the droplets. So it really depends on what you're looking for effect-wise. I like some large, some small. Now the trick here is not to apply too much. So if you just apply a little, and then leave it for at least 1 minute to see the effects developing. You can see that happening on camera here. Wait for it to develop. So it takes a little while for the bleaching effects to sort of really start to pop. You can see it easier on this pale one here. It's easier to wait and then add more if you want to, rather than add too much to begin with and have to reapply colour. So I'm going to add a little bit more in the middle and maybe a bit more over here. Now the other thing that you can do, if you wanted a much larger spot, is very carefully drip onto your background. Now I'm going to leave that there so you can see what happens. Can you see what it's happening here? It's running quite quickly and making a very, very large spot, and then the colour will fade out. So it bleeds and then fades. So you would use this very, very sparingly on your work, just to add sort of a few round spots. I don't often do this because it makes very large patterns, but I'm doing it here just to show you what it does. And you can add another drip in the middle, which will then make an even larger ring. Now this is really useful if you want to break up any lines, or if you've got any bits that you just sort of want to sort of minimise. So if you end up with any spots that you're not fond of. Okay, I'll stop that there. You can see the smaller flicks from the Colorless Blending ink and these larger spots from where I've just sort of dripped it on. It gives a beautiful background that's just perfect for stamping. Now don't forget, you'll need to stamp with an archival ink over the top of this because it's on glossy cardstock. So I do like the actual brand archival, and the jet black is one of my favourites on this. It gives a beautiful image, but I think also the VersaFine Onyx Black may work. Now the paler one is also gorgeous. I love the subtlety of this. And you've got the marks that I've made from dripping the blender directly on, plus all of that flicking. Now this is the spot where I dropped 2 drops of the Colorless Blending ink in the one spot, so you can see it's made a sort of like a ring within a ring. I really like that. I might actually do a little bit more of this. I think it's fantastic. So this is just 2 quick backgrounds with your Copic Various Inks, which are the inks used to refill the Copic markers. So this is just to give you a few ideas of other things you can do, other than colouring, with your Copic products. Thanks so much for watching and have a wonderful day. Bye.